What's up, guys? It's mjb.illust, and after a brief pause of not making any YouTube videos, I am back and ready to make more for y'all. And I thought I would start off with something a little bit different than what I was doing before. So instead of doing the typical time lapses that I have been doing, I decided to switch it up a little bit, branch out, and do a tutorial for you guys. What I'll do is I'll take you on a step-by-step process of how to pre-sketch, refine sketch, and basically prepare your whole composition for inking. And of course, along the way, I'll give you some commentary on what my personal preferences are during sketching, the tools that I use, and what helps me visualize what I'm drawing before it's the finished product. So follow me, guys. Jump right into it. Let's go draw some skulls. Alright guys, so real quick before I get started, I just want to show you what I like to use when I sketch. I'm not saying that these are the wrong or right supplies to have, it's just my personal preference. I have my two little eraser pens, one's big, one's small. This one gets the smudges out of the way, and this one kind of helps me add those highlights when I'm going in between my rough sketch and my refined sketch. And it really kind of defines the overall composition before I get it ready for inking. And then with my pencils, I have a lighter lead in this Staedtler 925, and I have a darker lead in this kind of weathered Staedtler 925. Again, these are not the right or wrong pencils to use. These are just the ones that feel more comfortable in my hand. So with that, I'm going to get right into some drawing, and here we go.
So as I start to sketch, one important thing to keep in mind is where I'm positioned on the page. I like to start off more to the middle of my surface area, that way I know that I'm not going to run out of room. It can be really frustrating, especially when you get so far into your sketch and you're already prepping for ink, when you have your subject matter or your character, whatever you're drawing, fall off the page entirely, or you have to cram in details just to make it fit. So that's definitely one thing that you'd like to look out for when you start sketching, is making sure that you allow yourself as much space as possible to clear up any mistakes, add any details, or make something bigger if you decide to. So really all that I'm doing when I start out a sketch is drafting out my basic shapes. I'm not focusing on any of the finite details at this point because it is a rough sketch. I'm sort of just playing around on the paper, making sure that everything is positioned where I want it to be and facing in the direction that I want it to face in. So basically what the beginning stages of your sketch are just establishing the framework for where all the details of your piece are going to be later on. Now, as you can see, the skulls are beginning to take shape, but what I've done basically is just built off of the basic shapes that I established at the beginning of the sketch. So I'm still playing around with the positioning, the angle, the overall shape of how I want the skull to look, and pretty much just getting a feel for what I want to use later on when I go in to establish my darker lines and add more details. And if you remember me mentioning the small eraser pen that I use to create highlights later on in the sketch, then I'll start to use that in the early stages of the sketch to erase some of those sketchy, smudgy, kind of scribbly lines that you see right here on the outside of the skulls. What this does is it creates a little bit more detail and it cleans up the picture as you're going along further in the sketching process. So moving further into the sketch process, you'll notice that I'm spending a little bit more time on the skull to the left. That's because I'm struggling with the shape and it's not looking the way that I want to. And during these times when you're struggling to get something to look the way that you want it to, it's easy to get discouraged. But that's why I use a lighter lead, because I can make those light markings and still be able to go and fix them. It might take a little bit of extra time, but it saves me a lot of frustration later on now that I don't have these details established. I can still go back in, make those small tweaks, those small changes, and keep playing around until I get the shape that I want out of this skull. So the basic message that I'm trying to send here is that all artists struggle. At times that you might not notice, artists struggle. It might seem so easy and it might seem so simple when you see the finished product, but artists struggle a lot. I struggle a lot. I spend hours and hours and hours making sure that the subject matter that I'm drawing looks absolutely perfect to me, and then I can get it ready for inking. So don't get discouraged when it's early on in the sketching process. Just take a break for a minute, or keep working and keep shaping up your character. Gradually, you've seen the whole process come from rough sketch to more refined sketch. Notice how I'm still using the lighter lead, even though I'm a little bit further into the sketching process. That's because if I make a mistake at this point, I can still fix it. When I start using my darker lead and start making mistakes and have to erase, that leaves more smudge marks, and smudge marks can really ruin a piece if there are too many. So as you can see, we're zooming in a little bit more just to capture all of those details that have been established so far. And now I'm going in with my darker lead to add to those details. So the way I like to think of it as is sort of creating your own coloring book. The rough sketch is preparing you for the refined, and then the refined sketch is preparing you for inking. And then once you have all of your ink laid down, you basically have your very own self-made coloring book ready for coloring. So I'll continue to go around my composition and keep adding those darker lines, making it look a little cleaner and a little bit more presentable. This way you have a clear, nice, crisp image, especially when you're uploading to Instagram. But basically what I'm doing in this stage of the process is giving myself a guideline for where I'm going to ink later. Now, occasionally I do skip the refined sketch process, but I always try to do the refined sketch process, only because if I don't and I leave the lead light and I leave it as rough sketch, it's easier to make mistakes when I go in and ink. So I always really try to do the refined sketch. That way I know I have my established lines and really defined lines so that I know where I'm making my shadows and I don't have any lines intersecting each other. And again, making a mistake at this stage can be really frustrating, especially if you're really in the zone and you're really emotionally invested into your piece. By this time, I usually am. I can see the finished product on the horizon, and I really don't want there to be any snag-ups, because it can be really discouraging, really frustrating, and really take all of the wind out of your sails. So here's a good representation of it's still the sketch process and you can still play around with your composition. Earlier on I wanted to add eyeballs into all of the skulls, but as you can see now I'm just coloring everything in because I had a different idea of what direction I wanted to take my piece in. And like I said before, I use my eraser pen to try to establish highlights and bring out those bright points. And right now you can see that I'm kind of erasing part of the area that I just colored in, just because I want to give you the illusion of where the light is hitting inside the eye sockets. Now, going in and adding a light source in the sketch stage, to me, it doesn't have to be 100%. You can be inaccurate if you want, because again, this is still the sketch phase. And once you get into inking and coloring, that's when it's going to be really important to make sure that your light source is equal through the whole composition. So as you can see, and thanks to a few sped up segments of this video, that the skulls have taken their shape, all of the details have been added in, and right now I'm going in and making finishing touches and making sure that the whole composition looks consistent across the board. I did have to add a couple of sped up parts of the video, because if I hadn't, then it would have been over an hour and a half long, and at that point it could have been pretty boring to watch. So I had to condense the video a little bit just to make it more streamlined and just to let you guys visualize the changes from beginning to end. And again, I'll just go in with my pencil eraser and erase any of those loose sketch lines that I made earlier on, and all the smudge marks that I've made from my hand kind of carrying over the page during the whole process. So a frequently asked question I receive is, how do I frame my composition? Usually I start out with my subject matter first, and then once I've established all the details, I get everything where I want it, then I'll go in and frame. It's easy to assume that you're framing first and adding your subject matter later, but it can actually be really constricting if you frame first. I like to go in and just have that free range to draw whatever I want, however big I want, and then it's easier to go in and add those borders when I'm all done sketching.
Well, alright guys, there we have it. There are the skulls. We've drawn them, you've drawn them, and I've tutorialed you on drawing skulls. I really hope you guys liked it, and if I need to work on any part of my commentary or the info that I'm giving you, please let me know in the comments below. And of course, if you want to jump back over to Instagram, follow me at mjb.illust if you want to see my new updates all the time, brand new illustrations. What more could you ask for? Follow along over there, like and subscribe here, leave comments, suggestions, everything you got below, just unload. I'll try to get to all of the comments, I'll try to see what I can do to make my videos better, but I really appreciate you guys stopping by, and I'm glad that I could give you guys a little bit of art knowledge. Thanks for stopping by, guys. I'll see you next time.